Welcome back. The title of this mini lecture is World War I at Home, Part 2. When it came time for Americans to participate in the First World War, many of them are going to do so having been drafted as a part of the selective service system, which was newly implemented beginning in 1917. The U.S. military prior to 1917 had been a relatively small force, and the constructs of a National Guard and all these other elements, again, all of this is, the professionalization of the military in the early 20th century is somewhat in its infancy here. And the military, when the war gets going, is relatively small, and again, it's going to have to increase in size substantially. Now, there had been a conflict that the U.S. military was involved in right as World War I was beginning for the U.S. And this is often referred to as the punitive expedition to Mexico. Now, that expedition saw U.S. soldiers deployed to sections of Mexico, and there were representatives from the Wilson administration that were sent down to observe the U.S. soldiers, the camps, and kind of the conditions that they were enduring. And some of the progressives who were a part of the administration who observed this were very concerned. They were deeply concerned about what U.S. soldiers were exposed to and kind of what kind of conditions existed for them. Now, I'm going to deal with some terms that have to do with sexual relations and this kind of thing here, so do be mindful of that. Essentially, the administration was very concerned potentially that U.S. soldiers, that young men, were being exposed potentially to, sexually transmitted diseases, and they begin to view women and sexually transmitted infections. They begin to view, or they're viewing women, particularly in Mexico, as a threat in terms of these forms of disease, as well as particularly concerns. Of course, the racialization of this period is also a part of this process. Now, these concerns in the era of the punitive expedition, they are going to influence how the U.S. thinks about training soldiers during the First World War the next year. All right, so the punitive expedition is 1916 to 1917. What we're talking about is 1917 and into 1918. Because what happens is the Wilson administration, through something called the Fosdick Commission, creates something called the Commission on Training Camp Activities. So they're going to create a process whereby training camps are operated nationally for this idea of protecting young men and their morality and their, sort of from women across the country, because they're viewing women as threats. And so what you're going to get is this, controlled space on these camps that are going to emphasize certain programs and activities due to these concerns about the body, due to these concerns about women, due to these concerns about sexual activities and all of this. And so the structure of what you're going to see at these camps, again, reflects these views about the body and about concerns over the bodies of women and the need to preserve the bodies of men. And this is going to result in this sort of commission on training camp activities that is going to emphasize lots of athleticism. Now, part of this, of course, is for soldiers as well, but also, again, this concern over viewing women as a threat. So you're going to see these other kinds of activities. You're going to see lots of emphasis on athletic training, sort of in this kind of way. A lot of it's going to be a lot of the terms and some of the pamphlets for this are very anti-German, right? You're going to see a lot of this. Again, this Commission on Training Camp Activities also is going to try to provide other forms of popular entertainment and outlets for these men. Again, separate from women. So you're going to see the YMCA and others here that are going to play a role. You're going to see theater halls that are going to play a role. You will see women involved, but the idea is that it's a very moral sort of approach here. The YWCA is going to have these hostess huts and this kind of thing. But again, there was this deep concern over the body, the need for the body to be exercised, to get exercise, and this deep concern over the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. So these camps are going to be sites and spaces of athleticism, but also and this idea of calisthenics and all of this. But there's also these other concerns that were a reflection of the views of gender and race at the time. All right. Thank you very much.